So my name's Alicia D'Amico, and I was approached by Elise, actually, and Ian, and they asked me to come here, and Debbie welcomed me in. I'm a very brand new member to this group, and I'm also a baby to activism. Literally, this election has really ticked me off. So you can't ask me questions about politics or official people, because honestly, I don't know the answers to that yet. But what I do know as a millennial is that the direction that our country is headed in right now is not positive in the sense that we're extremely divided. And that division causes further problems. And the more that we yell and the more that we scream at people, the more we push them away instead of bringing them into the fold. So I'm personally more interested in getting new people to come out and vote and be involved in things like that. And I'm also more interested in making emotional connections with people and getting them to change their thought process. Now, we call that emotional labor, and not everybody is equipped to do that. So before I share my story, I want everybody to know that I'm not saying that you have to go out there and be me. Maybe you want to do physical labor, maybe you want to send postcards, maybe you want to go out and hold signs and scream, and that makes you feel good and things and that's good. So I just don't want anybody to feel like you have to do something just because it's what I'm doing, because a lot of people think that it's a lot of work, and it is. Emotional labor is definitely a lot of work. So I'm going to read this email to you. I'm going to pull this down just a little bit more. There we go. So I'm going to read this email to you. Let me pull it up on my smartphone. And after I read it, I'm going to explain what took place. So this email came in to me on February the 20th at around 11 o'clock in the morning from a lady named Maria that I had met at a 7-Eleven down the street from my house. Hi, Alicia. I hope you remember me. My name is Maria, and we met at the gas station last week. I was the girl wearing the Trump button, and you asked me why I voted for him, and we talked for a while. I want to thank you for listening to me, and I want you to know that I listened to you too. I talked to my husband for hours that night and kept thinking about you. And I wanted to call you, but I was scared that you would think I was crazy. You made so many good arguments, or maybe they weren't arguments, but instead they were facts. I didn't really realize until our talk that I had voted for Trump because it was expected of me. My entire farm country area voted for him, and we were expected to. My parents did, so we did too. I never questioned it until I met you. I know you must think that sounds so silly, because I should have questioned it. You told me those things to watch out for, and you were right. He does do those things every single time, and somehow we just forgave him, or we really were just blinded by it all. Last night we threw away all of our Trump buttons, and we cried really hard as we called our parents to explain to them how we feel so responsible for this crazy man being in charge of our country. If I could take back our votes, I would in a heartbeat, because I feel so manipulated by him. That man is selfish, and he only cares about himself and making his businesses great again. And that is his version of making America great again. I want to meet with you again and hug you because you were so sweet to me and took the time to treat me with respect. I know it must be hard to do that, but you did it with such grace. I honestly did not want to vote for Hillary and have been a Republican my whole life. I'm 48 years old, and I have never even left the state of Florida. But I cannot sit here and pretend that what he has done is okay anymore. When you asked me about my children, and I told you about my sweet Jillian, and you asked me how I would feel as a mother if she had been one of his victims, and he got to sit in the White House taunting her every day on the television, it really hit home for me. I told my mom last night that I hoped that she would not be okay with it if it had been me as her child, and she said that it would not have been okay with her. I finally looked up his Twitter account, and can't believe that that's how he spends his time every day. And we are not pleased that he promises tax cuts, but is taking expensive vacations every weekend. Please let me know what we can do to help, if anything. I just want you to know that you matter, and the time that you spend matters. And I want to thank you so much for, sorry, I have to flip the screen, for caring about my family and not making me feel stupid. We would love to meet with you again. Woo! So I met Maria at 7-Eleven, and it was late at night, and my wife LaTanya was asleep, and normally she goes to 7-Eleven to get my Dove ice cream bars for me when I'm craving them. And so she was asleep, and I was like, I'm not gonna wake her up, so I'm just gonna go by myself. So I decided to go by myself, and it was close to midnight probably. And she was standing behind me in line, and I happened to notice that she had a Trump button on, and it just was like, Trump. I was like, oh, you know? But I wasn't gonna let on to her that So instead, as I paid and I turned around, I just smiled at her and said, "That's a beautiful blouse that you're wearing." And I continued to walk out as though everything was normal. I already knew in my mind that I wanted to talk to her, but I had to figure out how. So I got outside and started fidgeting around the garbage can so that I could make an excuse for why I was outside still when she came outside. And then when she came outside, I approached her and said, "Hey, I hope that this isn't something along these lines. Hey, I hope this isn't awkward for you. I want you to know this is a judge-free zone. But how do you think he's doing so far as president?" And she seemed a little stunned by that question. And then she's like, "To be honest, don't really know." And so I started to ask her really thought-provoking questions, but in a very non-antagonizing way. And when I approached the opposition, which we really shouldn't call each other opposition, we're all the same, we all have the same desires, which is to have better lives for our families. But when I approached her, I wanted to make sure that I kept a few things in mind. To be kind, to be humble, to be respectful, and to be relatable, because those are the things that ultimately are going to bring us closer to other people that don't think exactly the way that we do. And it's not like we have to be a cult of people that think exactly the same, but a little bit more progressive idealism would be good sometimes. So I was like, "Hey, I just want you to know this is a judgment-free zone, but I'm just curious, et cetera." And she's like, "Yeah." So I was like, "Okay, I want to ask her some more questions." So I asked her, "Do you have any children?" And she said, "Yes, I have a daughter." And she explained to me a little bit about her daughter and her family, and we talked a little bit about that. And I said, "Okay, I have a tough question for you. And if this is pushing any boundaries, feel free to tell me. But I just want to know if your daughter had been violated by a man, and that man went on to become the president of our country, and she had to watch him on television every single day, feeling violated every time that she saw him. How would you feel about that? If he was running for president, would you vote for him even though he was Republican?" And she said, "No." And I said, "Okay, let me ask you another question. Do you have any grandchildren?" And she said, "Not yet, but my daughter wants to get pregnant." And I said, "Okay. So imagine that you have a granddaughter, and your granddaughter has a heart condition, and she needs the ACA in order to save her life because you guys don't have any other insurance. But it's not available, and there's not, a good replacement plan. Because at that point in time, there was no replacement. Now they've got this new thing, but we'll not talk about that right now." Again, she just kind of looked at me stunned as these questions were processing in her mind as though she'd never been asked it that way before. And I could tell that it was getting to her. I asked her, I said, "Do you know why you voted for him?" And she shook her head, but she didn't. And that's why she sent me the email later on. I gave her my information. We talked for a while about a lot of subjects in our family and things like that. But I gave her my Facebook information and my email. I said, "If you ever want to reach out to me and talk, I'm here for you. And I hope that you figure it out. I hope that you get on that journey and figure it out." And so it was a few days later when I received this email from her, and I was shocked. I really was. Not because I've never made a connection with the opposition before, but because we met in a parking lot, basically. We talked on a parking lot at a gas station. And I was like, it's late at night, she's not going to remember me. But that really touched me. And it's been a little over a month since I did my first activism-related activity. And I've been a little confused as to what I personally want to do, what my personal journey is in this resistance movement. I've been asked to write blogs because I'm a good writer, but I don't want to sit behind a computer and limit to that because I've written blogs before. I want to do something different. And so as I continue to try to figure out what it is for me, and I go to these protests and I do these things, it just started to become apparent to me that what I want to do is unite people together. So uniting Americans, uniting human beings, bringing people together through commonalities, and not focusing on our differences is what's important to me. So I think that the best way to do that, like I said before, is to be relatable, to be kind, to be humble, to be friendly. And hopefully in doing so, we'll be able to bring more people to a more progressive way of thinking. And even if we don't get them to, switch over and become Democrats or anything like that, that's totally fine, as long as they support, good ideas and progressive thinking. So that's it.
For you, I hope that you can answer this question. We went to the demonstration near McDill when Trump came a few weeks ago, and I was protesting about health care, etc. And we left before this happened, but protest in a very harsh way. And I was wondering if you had any suggestions about what to do if you are at a demonstration that is invaded by Trump supporters who are being rude and physically violating the protesters.
Wow.
Do you have any suggestions?
Well, that's a tough question. To be honest with you, I think that the very first thing that we all need to understand is that we can't get through to everybody. You know, when I talk to somebody, I'm thinking, probably not going to get through to them, but if I don't try, I won't know. I personally have not been up against violent Trump supporters yet, thank goodness. I'd like to think that I can be so kind and respectful in that situation.
Yes.
But I may scream back, who knows? So I think it would depend on the circumstances. But I'll relate to an activity that I did last weekend, which was not Trump supporters that were being aggressive, but I went to an event in Ybor called the Wall of Love to honor the lives of the 7 transgender women that have lost their lives so far this year. And in Ybor, every single Friday night, the hate preachers stand on the side of the street. And they scream out things that are extremely offensive, and I don't want to offend anybody here, so I'll keep those terms to myself. But they're bad enough to make somebody consider suicide. That's how bad they are. And they go there every Friday night for so many years, and they just scream at and yell at and preach at the homosexual, gay, lesbian, transgender community. And they scream at them and they say these absurdities. So we decided to go out there and become the bigger vision. So we're holding our signs and we're doing our chants and things like that. And I just saw an opportunity to talk to one of these hate preachers because he was not being as aggressive as the main guy. And perhaps this term might come across offensive, but I think the main guy is a cult leader personally because his church is called the Biblical Research Center. And it literally consists of them traveling around the country to yell at people and scream at people and tell them they're going to hell. So, yeah, not so good, right? So I was watching, he had a team of people with him, maybe 5 or 6 people that were with him, yeah? So he had like 5 or 6 people that were with him. Some were his bodyguards to make sure that he was safe, and other people were given their own headsets so that they could chant and stuff as well. And I noticed one guy that every time somebody on our side was yelling and screaming at him, he would buck up against them, okay? So he would be like yelling back. But if a woman came and screamed at him, he would kind of do this. And it was at that moment that I realized he probably would never put his hands on a woman. Now, the man that was leading that cult, weeks and weeks in a row, has been known to push women in the street and hurt them and push them, and in fact, he pushed me that night. So when I saw one of his followers, one of these believers of him acting that way, I was like, that's an opportunity. So I went up to him and I said, hey, can we have a conversation? I'm going to keep my hands here, tucked into myself. I'm not going to scream at you as long as you don't scream at me. And he's like, yeah, sure. So we engaged in a conversation and I said, you look like somebody that would never touch or hurt a woman. Is that pretty accurate? I think if you ask somebody that, they're going to respond because you're saying something polite about them. So he's like, oh no, I would never. And I said, okay, that's good. That's very respectful. It's very admirable. I'm very glad to hear you say that. So, can I ask why you follow a man that pushes women into the street? And he says, he doesn't do that. And I said, you want to see a video? And he's like, yeah. So we showed him videos of what some of the people in his organization were doing. And he's like, whoa. Okay, so I say video of everything when you're out because you just never know. But that definitely kind of struck him. And so that's how we engaged to open the conversation. And from there, he was supposed to be Larry's bodyguard. Larry's the name of the hate preacher. He was supposed to be Larry's bodyguard. And he started to walk further and further away from Larry and walk off with me to the side. Meanwhile, my wife engaged in conversation with Larry because Larry said that because we were gay, we didn't believe in God. Well, my wife's father is a deacon. And she believes very firmly in God. And so she engaged in conversation with him about the Bible, to which they had to reference the Bible, and she did not. And that was the moment that some of his followers started to see that what he was telling them, all gays are devil, they don't believe in God. And they're like, dude, she knows the Bible better than you. Of course they didn't say that, but you can tell that's what they were thinking. And so, she held her own. So as she was holding him, I took the other guy, and we went a little further away. And I was like, don't worry, I'm not gonna hurt you, not gonna do anything bad, I don't have anybody around the corner waiting to jump on me, I just want to talk to you. And so we talked for probably 20, 30 minutes, maybe 15, it might have seemed longer than it was. And I told him, I said, look, here's the deal. I'm not trying to change your position. I'm not trying to have you disavow yourself from Christianity. I'm not trying to tell you not to go to church. In fact, I'm not even telling you that you have to accept and love gay people. What I'm telling you is that you should not be standing on a street corner making gay people and transgender people and all these other people feel so oppressed that they think about committing suicide at night. There is a better way. You can go find a real church with a real pastor, and you can still choose to not love gay people. That's fine. But don't stand here and try to do this either, because this is not good, And he seemed like he was really good at that, So we ended the conversation amicably, we shook hands, and he told me he would sleep on it. So I would say that if you can have a window to somebody, you see somebody that's kind of like, well, that's a little weird that guy's jumping in, then go talk to that person. And then that person will talk to somebody else, and that person will talk to somebody else, and that person will talk to somebody else, and before you know it, they stop defending the people that act about it. That was a long answer, I'm sorry.
May I simply suggest that another possible resolution to that problem?
Sure. Do you want the microphone?
I'm sorry?
Do you want the microphone? I'm sorry, you called town hall, we're taking out, we want to have microphone.
I'm just going to suggest that another possible solution to that, when you have big groups like that, there's normally a policeman somewhere around, and I would find a policeman.